So, good afternoon, Sue Miller.
Hello,
And
it's lovely to be here. Good morning to you from my country.
okay, and thank you really for being here. For your future Romanian readers, I have your book in Romanian. So really, it's a very beautiful cover book, and we will discuss a little about this. So we are talking about your recent novel translated into Romanian, which is Monogamie, translated at Trei Publishing House. So this is a book, well, 400 pages, but it's lovely. It's okay. We are fine.
Not meant to be frightening, really. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So we should say that this is not your first novel. I mean, you wrote 10 novels. Some of your novels were adapted into movies. So, yes, and translated into, I guess, more than 20 languages around the world. And this novel is called Monogamie. So I will be very honest. When I read the title Monogamie, I said, okay, it's about everything you want, but it's not about monogamy. It's about, okay, we can say that it's about loyalty, obedience in a marriage, about love. But what was your first intention as a writer concerning this novel?
You mean the title, essentially?
Yes, of course.
The connection. I thought, in a certain way, it's a sort of predicate of marriage in some cultures, in parts of every culture. I think that's people believe very, very different things about the connection between monogamy and marriage. And so I just wanted to explore that essentially with the various characters that I have. The notion of, it's also sort of the notion of possession in a marriage, to what degree you have freedom to move around and in other ways too. It's focused on the characters basically, so I'm just looking at very specific people and their notion of that word. It isn't it isn't meant to be a general recommendation for anybody, but it's meant to make people thoughtful, I think, about what that word means to these particular characters, and how it's true in some ways of all of them, and also not true of them too, or some of them anyway. So, and I wanted the reader to be thinking about that as a kind of issue in marriage, and sort of be maybe perhaps interested in questioning that for herself or himself as they went through the book, what that means to them. And I wanted them to be confronted with someone who might be difficult for them to forgive in certain ways as a character.
Yeah.
And just be thoughtful about that. So it's just a sort of poke, I guess.
You know, it's interesting. I wrote a lot of things for telling you, and I was curious because when you say monogamy, of course, you are thinking about someone who's married to just one person at a time, or someone who has a sexual relationship with someone at one time, or in zoology. And this is quite interesting because I never knew that about 90% of bird species are monogamous. So, but we are not birds, and your characters are not birds, even if they fly out of love because they are in love and they have the feeling that they are flying. Did you think of your characters from the very beginning that they will be happy persons in love or not very happy persons in love?
I thought they would have complicated relationships to the issue of being in love, and it would come and go with them. Actually, I think one of the characters who is the couple they're called Graham and Annie, and Graham is the one who is unfaithful, not terribly unfaithful, but unfaithful enough to disturb her under certain circumstances. So I felt that they were in love all through the book after they met, and I thought that they also remained who they were in that. Although I think Annie changed herself more for the marriage in a certain way than Graham did. Graham tried to change himself for the marriage.
Yeah.
To me, he's a very appealing character in that his feelings and his wishes about himself are different from what he's actually able to do in a relationship. So I just thought that their marriage was a very loving one, and there were issues and problems from time to time. And I think Annie had a harder time being married than Graham did, but also she was monogamous in the marriage as he wasn't. So it's I think that issue in my book, as well as in life, is very different for different people. And there are birds who are not monogamous too. So there's that. And Graham is perhaps just one of those birds that has a hard time, but he does not fly away. And he stays in spite of that. I mean, doesn't have anything to do with his feeling for Annie in a certain way, except to make him feel guilty.
We will talk about the topic of the book, but I was telling you at the beginning about the cover. Yeah. And there is a particular reason for which I really love this cover. It's this flower. Mm-hmm. It's like a unique flower, like, in Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, la rose unique au monde, the rose unique in the world. Mm-hmm. And I think of this flower like of the loyalty. It's loyalty in life is a rare thing. And mm-hmm. between Annie and Graham as a love, or between, let's say, Frida, your character, and mm-hmm. Graham, we get to know that loyalty and obedience are very hard to find out. Did you think from the very beginning that you will build this novel based on this tricky word, which is loyalty? Mm-hmm. I mean, what does loyalty really mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a question that the novel does wish to raise. I mean, mm-hmm. And true. It seems to me that Graham, in some ways, is the most loyal of all of the characters. He doesn't let go of anybody. He tries to hold everybody very close. It's partly because it's a need of his to be loved, and so he madly loves everyone he touches, essentially. So I think it is an examination of loyalty as much as it is of monogamy, and monogamy is in a certain sense synonymous with loyalty. It usually applies more to sexuality than anything else, but mm-hmm. I think it is a question also of love that's raised by the book, loyalty and love. And I do think that Graham is the most loyal character in the book. It can be damaging to other people that he's so loyal, that he sort of wishes to hold on to everything in his life. But I think it also asks some questions about that.
It's very interesting because Graham is a character that we follow till the end of the book. Mm-hmm. But, we have to make this a spoiler because, we have to say that because it's impossible not to mention that Graham dies at, mm-hmm. At the page 100 or so out of 400
a little later, but it happens fairly early in the book.
He dies. Mm-hmm. So we have the novel of the mourning of a woman mm-hmm. who loved him. Mm-hmm. It's a novel of grief, and it's a novel also, I somehow thought of Marcel Proust, because there are a lot of memories out here. Every object in the house, every happening in this novel, it has to do with the memories. Mm-hmm. So there are the memories of Annie remembering this man, Graham. Mm-hmm. Was this important for you to point out the memories out in this novel? Because they are the most of the part in this novel are the memories. It's mm-hmm. very important because the life of someone is made of memories. Mm-hmm. Is not made of the present moment. Mm-hmm. It's always about the memories.
Right. And it's a way for me as a writer to keep Graham in the book after he dies. Yeah. I mean, I would say he is maybe the central character. I mean, it's told from the point of view of all of the characters. The book moves around amongst them, including Graham before he dies. But I think the issue of memory becomes very important, particularly for Annie after Graham's death, because her memory is changed and sort of taken from her. The memories she has of Graham, which are helping her in her grief, as memories do when we're grieving someone. We can call them up, we can feel connected to them again. Our very sorrow makes us feel that connection. And then she learns that he has been unfaithful. Not radically unfaithful, but unfaithful. And she thinks more unfaithful than he actually has been. We get to see that at the beginning when we're in Graham's mind. And that alters all of her memories. It sort of casts a pall over them, where it's a scrim through which she sees him, and she's not able to think of him the same way anymore. So in a certain way, her memories are destroyed by an event that she learns of. And it becomes a sort of... I think the memories themselves are an active part of, I mean, it's a way of keeping Graham active in the book until the very end, because it would have been a very hard thing for me as a writer to give Graham up, because he's such a sort of compelling character, I think. And it's a way to sort of also know all the other characters, beginning as he's just introduced. We also see their memories of him, and those are very important as we move through the book. Everybody has a sort of a different version of their Graham, but he's consistent in all of them. But it sort of becomes a question of what you remember and why you remember it, and the way in which sort of memory controls our lives and our perceptions of other people also. So it was just a very interesting thing and a motif, I guess, for me moving through to sort of work with that, with each character, essentially, to look at the way they remember him and to look at the ways in which he was different for each of them, while always being very Graham-like, very much the same in his relations to everybody too. So,
well, something that I really loved about this book was the fact that you talk about Graham, this man, which I love very much. I mean, I think he's a perfect husband, even if he did what he did. I won't tell very much, because I want people to read the book and understand what happened. Okay, so, but I love the fact that you built this novel as a broken mirror. If you can imagine, so and each piece of the broken mirror is a character, and we have different perceptions about Graham in every piece of the broken mirror, and these pieces are said by your characters in the book. I mean, by Sarah, by Lucas, by Frida, by Annie. So this is quite interesting, because you have the whole image of this character. You intended to do this like a journal of every character. This is not easy to do, because it's huge if you look from a distance.
Yeah, I actually had thought of it. We have a thing when you're studying psychology, particularly psychology in groups. I'm sure it's true, but called it's a social circle, and you sort of it's a sense. I like it very much, but you sort of have a circle, and you place your characters around the edge of that circle, sociogram, and one character acts. And that affects, let's say, these two characters. Each of them reacts, and that affects this character, and this. So you end up with a kind of spider web of connection and impact of one character on another that just goes on and on and on until it's just a very densely drawn set of lines. And that's the way I thought of it, in a certain way, that this was a book about infinite number of interactions going on and on.
That's true.
And reactions to one person's reaction to another, in the way in which that reaction impacts all the other characters. So I did have that sense of being multiple versions, multiple ways of responding, all of which sort of make this very dense connection, which is essentially what I think of as a family being like, this sense of, reactions, infinite reactions and misunderstandings and some perfect understandings, but that essentially it comes together in a whole. I think the image of a broken mirror is also quite lovely, because it has that sense too of the different sections being quite perhaps different, but gluable. In the end, you can put them back together in a certain way. Lines and cracks everywhere, of course.
And it's a beautiful metaphor for not knowing exactly what happens in someone's life. I mean, you can live a perfect love by knowing that it's the perfect love, but not knowing that it's not the perfect love. And it makes you wonder, what is perfect love? And because I said that, I will be very honest with you. My favorite character is not Annie. My favorite character is Frida. You know, a reader has his empathy with one character. And why I'm telling that? Because I have the feeling that I know more Frida than Annie. Annie has her mysterious way of being in her life. I mean, she's more hidden than Frida is a very open person. She's very honest. She actually sacrifices herself. I could never be like her, but I wish I could be like her. So do you prefer, I know it's a difficult question, but anyway, do you prefer Annie or Frida as a writer?
I mean, they both are. I don't actually prefer one over the other, but I think in some ways it's been interesting to me to have the book published and have people's responses, because there are a lot of people who feel as you do, and also people have said that they feel that they would like Frida's story to go on. They would like to know more about her. They would like to watch her go on in her life. Annie is the character we end with, the book ends with, not Frida, but Frida's very close to the ending, but she seems to have a possibility in life. She makes certain discoveries about her feelings, about what she's done with her life so far, about what her love for Graham, that lead her to the possibility of doing something else with her life than what she's done before. She sort of comes to think quite differently about certain aspects of her life in the book. And it does seem to me that it's something that one could trace out further. I haven't been tempted to, but it is, for a lot of readers, it raises questions that aren't resolved within the book. And I think that interests a reader, generally speaking. But I think she is a tremendously sympathetic character. And she's lost a great deal, but of course gained something too by being an extra element, the first wife of this very dynamic man in the second marriage that he makes. I mean, they include her. He in particular includes her. And it's an interesting position for her to occupy, and an interesting thing for her to have done with her life. And his death makes something possible for her finally, as she thinks about it. It's a kind of a question of her memories that alter the way she thinks about what she's done so far. So I think that she's, in a certain way, the least resolved of the characters at the end of the book.
Yeah.
Perhaps. And I think she's immensely appealing and immensely generous as a person. And that's very touching to people, I think, sometimes.
I'm pretty sure that most of the women would like to be Frida, because I don't know, but sometimes it's more comfortable just to give up love and stay apart than to be part of the story who made you suffer all your life.
Yeah,
I think you understand that. And I was thinking right now about the fact that for almost 2 years, a lot of families who are stuck at their homes had to deal with love, because the husband and the wife have to see each other day after day, just being stuck in a home with the pandemics. And I think it's interesting. I would like very women to read this book. I mean, I really recommend it, because I'm a woman who divorced a lot of years ago. It doesn't matter, but I never regretted. I'm not ashamed to say that. I mean, it's I'm like I'm okay with this. I can deal with this. And I think that's a very, very good novel for women to understand where they are in their lives and to understand that nothing is perfect. And I'm thinking right now of Annie, who till the end of the novel, I won't tell the end of the novel, but she lives in the grief. But what fascinated me was the fact that even in the grief, she saw love. And I know that, because, okay, in the end, we find out about this, but she found out love within the grief, which is spectacular.
Thank you. I mean, that was where I wanted to go with the ending of the book and with that character who's sort of harder than Frida and more remote than Frida. And to sort of have the book end the way it does, for me, was very touching. To bring a character to have a character change in a certain way seemed to me through grief. Seemed to be an interesting thing to pursue. I mean, they're all changed through their grief of Graham, but Annie more radically, I think, than anyone else in the book. But thank you for that perception. I'm delighted.
No, it's lovely the way you put it till the end. I mean, in the end is gorgeous. I mean, I loved it. I didn't know what you were doing, what you had to say in the end, but the end is lovely. I would like to tell right now about something, and I'm sorry because I have to watch on my phone, but I'm telling you why. There is a song. Your novel made me think of a song. I mean, while I was reading your book, I was just listening to this song in my head. I don't know if you know it, but it's called Love is Blindness. It's a song of U2, but it's also sung by Jack White. And there are some lyrics: a little death without mourning, no call and no warning, baby, a dangerous idea that almost makes sense. Love is drowning in a deep well, all the secrets and no one to tell. Take the money, honey. Blindness. Love is blindness. So I don't know why, but the love story between Annie and Graham made me think of this beautiful song. Is love really blindness in your novel? I would like the readers, your future readers, to know before they read the book. Do you have to shut your eyes sometimes in love?
I think that, I mean, the novel almost says as much. They're very near the beginning in talking about Annie and her sort of decision to sort of jump into this relationship with Graham, and the feeling that she has that she's also losing something while she does that. And sometimes feeling very a part of herself, feeling that she's lost it. Throughout the marriage, actually, she has that feeling occasionally. And I think that is something that happens to people, that they, and then I think there's also the question of the unknowability of the other. I mean, Graham is a pretty knowable person. I mean, most people can see him very clearly because he presents himself. But he does have this sort of other side to him that's not knowable. And I think in that sense, she proceeded through the marriage with a certain blindness. He not so much, but yes, she has the main character, I think. And that's something that does change for her in a certain sense at the very end. She has a kind of vision that changes things.
Graham is a Cambridge bookstore owner, so I think it's not, you did it on purpose to choose a library for the space where Annie and Graham meet, because fiction, and you wrote it in your novel, fiction helps us a lot, helps us a lot to understand life. Why did you choose a library? Was it because fiction helps us living, I don't know, more easily, or just to to think that life is easier than we think, though it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't actually think about that choice ahead of time. I mean, you need to give people a life, you need to give people work. And it seemed to me that this would be a great profession, a great job for Graham. Someone who wanted to be a writer, gives that up, but lives among books, lives among fiction. Not only fiction, of course, there are other books, but and understands and is interested in the function of sort of reading and books and fiction. And fiction, he is the one who says something about fiction being a help in living one's life. I mean, because it makes you think that life is a shape, essentially, that it has more meaning than perhaps it does. Fiction helps you look at life that way, is what he says at some point. But I think that he is someone who, if the bookstore also makes him, gives him he's at the center of it. He's like a king in his kingdom when he's at the bookstore. So it seemed to me also a perfect profession for him in that way. But I think he articulates what you're saying too in the course of the book about fiction. And I feel that way about fiction. I'm a desperate reader of fiction. So I'm sort of always looking for the answer to things. And I feel that way, that for me, it's the most important form, really, of the written word, fiction. So.
What are you reading right now? What's on your shelf?
I'm reading, actually, I've been doing a lot of rereading during the pandemic. Sort of books that I've adored and wanted to go back to. So at the moment I'm reading a collection of short stories by a woman who never had a huge amount of success. Or she was a sort of literary success in America. But her name is Edith Perlman. And the book is called Binocular Vision. So I'm rereading that, as I have reread a number of other books, but I'm also always trying to read. I read reviews and I try to sort of look for books that I think I would like. And so I've just reread a bunch of other things and have other things in the house I'm going to read. But that's the one it's a very big book. It's a collection of all of her work. The other person I've read, who's not unlike her in some ways, is another short story writer. Alice Munro, whose name I'm sure you know.
Yes,
yeah. And I've reread literally all of her short stories. We have, books and books and books of hers, and then collected books, and I've just been sort of awash in Alice Munro for a long time. Also a sort of unknown writer, I think, Norman MacLean. But I've reread his work. There was a film made that people know, one of his short stories called A River Runs Through It. But he's a wonderful writer, a sort of a story spinner. I mean, a yarn spinner, as we have it in English. Sort of directly addresses you and just starts to talk about something from his life or something he imagines out of his life.
Since you mentioned movies, I'm curious because I read on the internet something about Holly Hunter producing a movie adapted on your book. Is it true? Because if it's true, it's wow.
Yeah, no, when I learned that myself, I thought, how perfect an actress.
I don't know if it's fake news, but is it true?
It is true that at this point, a script is being written. And a company has optioned it. And that means almost nothing because there are many scripts to get written and many options that nobody picks up. So I'm hopeful that it will happen. And she was interested in being attached to it and acting in it. I think they call it attached to it rather than. So she sort of, I think, would be the actress that plays her if this all works out. But that would be, at best, a year or two down the line later.
Yeah, I know you wrote this novel in 6 years. And I was wondering, okay, I usually ask these questions to writers because I'm curious, when you spend so many time with your characters, I mean, 6 years from your life, you just spent 6 years writing about Annie and Frida and Graham and Sarah and Lucas and okay, Rosemary. We won't say who's Rosemary. Okay.
Yeah.
But you spend so many time with them. Do you have a feeling at the end of your writing that you are in a breakup with your characters? Do they haunt you sometimes?
No, they don't haunt me. I'm still very familiar with them. I can still think of them as people I was terribly interested in. But I think the other thing about finishing a book is you're so happy to finish a book, especially one that's taken you as long as this one does.
6 years.
There's a certain way in which you want to say, go on, go live your life. Now I'm going to live my life over here, not with you anymore. You want it to be over. You're yearning for it to be over because it's been a long, in this case particularly, it's been a long one, but even with shorter ones. So there's a very mixed feeling. And it's not of sorrow. It's not of missing them. I mean, I felt I got done what I wanted to get done in this book with these characters. So for me, I have finished with them. It's interesting. I've just never felt the impulse, as some writers do, to go back and revisit certain characters and watch their lives play out. As with Frida, I mean, she is the character, I think, who might be very interesting, or Sarah, or I don't know. But I'm not tempted. I'm more tempted to sort of think of another whole book and then to people it with new people, different people. So it's a complicated feeling. I mean, you sort of you just want them to go away in a certain sense, because that means you're done. That means you've finished. That means you've made something of them.
Yes, you made it beautifully. I will be very honest. So I really loved your book, and when I read it, so it's a beautiful cover, and when I read it,
even inside it,
just because I didn't want to spoil the cover. So
oh, that's just gorgeous.
This is the flower I was talking at the beginning. I would really, in the end, I would really love the women here read this book, because at least I was relieved when I found out that I'm not guilty in love. I'm not guilty of having divorced. It learns you really a lot about what's love, about what's a marriage, or about what a marriage should be. So I would like, in the end, just you to send a message to your Romanian readers. My guess is women, Romanian readers. But anyway, please, if you just could send a message for them.
I'm thrilled to have the book be translated, in particular to the idea of leaping across oceans and sort of being in Romania. So I hope that the response is really one of affection for these strange American people. I mean, I hope there's a willingness to leap back across the ocean on their part and see these characters fully. So that's my wish. But I'm delighted to be translated. It means so much to me. It's just thrilling.
Thank you so much. You are a lovely person. I adore you. I mean, no, really, you are lovely by the way you are writing. And thank you very much for this interview. And I'm just, I wish you to write again and again and again stories like this, just to, for us, the readers, to understand life in a smoother way, I will say. It helps us a lot. It helps us a lot what you're doing. And thank you so much. And all the best, Sue Miller. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. This has been wonderful.